The four quadrants of the biaxial model each relate to a particular type of behaviour. In DISC, we refer to these as dominance, influence, steadiness and compliance, the four vital ideas that lie at the heart of the theory. Now, we'll go on to examine each of these concepts in more detail. The first quadrant describes people measuring high on the assertive scale and low on the openness scale. In other words, they are controlled. How does an assertive and controlled person behave? Their active assertiveness makes them impatient to see results, and this sense of urgency makes them direct and efficient. Control brings a sense of individuality, so that people of this kind are actively self-motivated and prefer to work independently. Because of their direct independence, others can often see them as demanding in nature, while their sense of self-reliance makes them competitive and often ambitious. In DISC, behaviours that combine elements of assertiveness and control are described by the term dominance. Dominant individuals are attracted to roles that give them independence and personal power, where they are able to meet challenges with energy and determination. The next quadrant also contains people measuring high in assertiveness, but here it mixes with openness instead of control, and the result is a quite different personal approach. The open element in their behaviour makes them much more sociable than the independently minded dominant types. They are more accepting of others, making them friendly and gregarious. In fact, people of this kind place great importance on positive relations with others. For all their friendliness and sociability, they still have the directness and energy associated with assertive types, and that makes them outgoing and enthusiastic. In dominant types, this proactive nature tends to appear as self-reliance, but in this case, we see it as expressive self-confidence instead. In DISC, behaviours that combine elements of assertiveness and openness are described by the term influence. People like this can be expected to show a persuasive and even charming nature. Where a dominant person might be bluntly demanding, an influential person will prefer to use strong communication to achieve their aims. In the third quadrant, we stay with open behaviour, but now we move away from assertiveness into more receptive characteristics. Receptive people don't show the same levels of energy and drive as those on the assertive side of the model. Instead, we expect to see more patient, even, and calm characters in this area. People with this type of behaviour tend to dislike change or uncertainty, so they plan their actions thoughtfully and tend to work persistently once they've set out on a task. Though they're generally less confident or outgoing than influential types, people of this kind are still open, but that openness tends to be shown in an amiable and generous nature. In DISC, behaviours that combine elements of receptiveness and openness are described by the term steadiness. Steady people combine the undemanding nature associated with receptiveness with a positive approach to others, a combination which makes them generally patient and accepting in style. Finally, we complete the circle by coming to the fourth and final quadrant, where the receptive elements meet control. Like the steady types we met in the previous quadrant, people in this area are also generally undemonstrative and undemanding, but their controlled element means that they have a more individualistic approach. They tend to see life in terms of structure and rules, and they're concerned with being as accurate and precise as possible. Because of this, they're often cautious in nature and sensitive to changes and developments. With other people, their receptive side makes them rather restrained, and their cautious and controlled communication style means that they're also quite diplomatic. While people of this kind are not as naturally sociable as those showing steadiness, they can see the value in cooperating with others to achieve a goal. In DISC, behaviours that combine elements of receptiveness and control are described by the term compliance. Compliant people combine the undemanding nature associated with receptiveness with a controlled approach to others, and this combination makes them generally focused on rules. So, the biaxial model gives us 4 distinct behavioural elements, or factors, corresponding to the 4 quadrants. They are dominance, influence, steadiness and compliance, or D, I, S and C. And those initials form the acronym DISC. Together, they create a useful common language for discussing personal attributes and behaviours. So far, we presented the 4 DISC factors independently of one another to highlight their key features. In reality, of course, people tend to combine aspects of these underlying patterns in their behaviour. So we need a tool that can help us understand the relations between all these behavioural factors and axes in an understandable way. It's in this area that DISC really comes into its own.